Between 1950 and 1979, church ladies across America fed entire congregations using 30 dump-and-bake desserts that required no fancy techniques and no culinary skills. These weren't gourmet desserts from cooking schools. These were lazy dump cakes assembled by opening cans, dumping ingredients, and baking until golden brown. They feed 20 people for under $3. Grandmas brought these desserts to church potlucks every single week, carried them in the back seats of station wagons, and served them on paper plates with plastic forks. Tonight, we remember these 30 forgotten dump-and-bake desserts that fed the whole church. The most iconic dump-and-bake dessert church ladies made between 1950 and 1979 was cherry dump cake, requiring only cherry pie filling, yellow cake mix, and butter because it fed 20 people for $2 and required absolutely no mixing bowls or baking skills. This wasn't a fancy cherry cake made from scratch with fresh cherries and homemade frosting. This was 2 cans of Comstock cherry pie filling, dumped into a greased 9x13 pan, covered with Duncan Hines yellow cake mix, sprinkled straight from the box, topped with thin slices of butter, arranged in rows, then baked at 350 degrees for 45 minutes until the top turned golden brown and the filling bubbled around the edges. Church ladies bought cake mix for 39 cents per box, pie filling for 49 cents per can, and butter for 68 cents per pound, creating desserts that cost $1.98 total and served the entire congregation after Wednesday night services or Sunday potlucks, carried to church in aluminum pans that never came home empty. The sweetest tropical dump cake church ladies brought to potlucks between 1955 and 1978 was pineapple dump cake, using crushed pineapple, yellow cake mix, and butter because pineapple was cheaper than fresh fruit, and the dessert tasted like pineapple upside-down cake, without the complicated flipping technique. This wasn't an elegant layer cake with pineapple rings and maraschino cherries arranged artfully on top. This was 2 20-ounce cans of Dole crushed pineapple in heavy syrup, dumped into a 9x13 pan with all the juice included, sprinkled with Betty Crocker yellow cake mix poured directly from the box, dotted with 2 sticks of margarine sliced thin and distributed evenly across the surface, then baked at 350 degrees until the cake mix absorbed the pineapple juice and formed a golden crust. Grandmas bought crushed pineapple for 39 cents per can during sales, cake mix for 42 cents, and margarine for 59 cents per pound, creating desserts that cost $2.18 and fed entire church basements full of hungry people after revival meetings and choir practice. The most summery dump cake grandmas baked for church between 1952 and 1977 was peach dump cake, made with canned peaches, yellow cake mix, and butter because peaches reminded elderly church ladies of summer orchards and childhood before anyone bought fruit in cans. This wasn't fresh peach cobbler made with ripe peaches peeled and sliced by hand. This was 2 large cans of Del Monte sliced peaches in heavy syrup dumped into a buttered 9x13 baking dish, covered completely with Duncan Hines yellow cake mix, sprinkled straight from the box without stirring, topped with 2 sticks of butter, sliced into thin pats, and arranged in neat rows across the dry cake mix. Then baked at 350 degrees for 50 minutes until the butter melted into the cake mix and created a crispy golden topping over bubbling peach filling. Church ladies bought canned peaches for 48 cents per 29-ounce can, cake mix for 39 cents, and butter for 68 cents, creating desserts that cost $2.03 and disappeared within minutes at church picnics and fellowship dinners. The most fall-flavored dump cake church ladies made between 1955 and 1979 was apple dump cake, using apple pie filling, spice cake mix, and butter because it tasted like apple pie without requiring pie crust skills or hours of peeling apples by hand. This wasn't homemade apple pie with hand-crimped crust and cinnamon sugar sprinkled on top. This was two 21-ounce cans of Comstock apple pie filling dumped into a 9 by 13 pan, covered with Duncan Hines spice cake mix poured straight from the box, topped with 2 sticks of margarine sliced thin and placed in rows until the entire surface was covered, then baked at 350 degrees for 45 minutes until the spice cake absorbed the apple juice and formed a cinnamon-scented crust that smelled like Thanksgiving. Grandma's bought apple pie filling for 52 cents per can at A&P, spice cake mix for 45 cents, and margarine for 59 cents per pound, creating desserts that cost $2.08 total and fed 24 people at church Thanksgiving dinners and harvest festivals held in fellowship halls decorated with corn stalks and paper turkeys. The prettiest purple dump cake church ladies brought to potlucks between 1960 and 1978 was blueberry dump cake, made with blueberry pie filling, white cake mix, and butter, because blueberries stained everything purple and white cake mix showed off the color better than yellow. This wasn't a delicate blueberry cake with fresh berries folded into batter and cream cheese frosting. This was 2 cans of wilderness blueberry pie filling, dumped into a greased 9 by 13 pan, covered with Pillsbury white cake mix sprinkled directly from the box without mixing, dotted with 2 sticks of butter sliced into 1/4-inch pats and distributed evenly across the dry mix, then baked at 350 degrees until the top turned golden and the blueberry filling bubbled purple around the edges and stained the sides of the pan. Church ladies bought blueberry pie filling for 59 cents per can because blueberries cost more than cherries or apples, white cake mix for 42 cents, and butter for 68 cents, creating desserts that cost $2.28 and looked fancy enough for church wedding receptions even though they took 10 minutes to assemble. 5 dump cakes down, 25 remain. These weren't desserts that required skill or training. These were the lazy church potluck staples grandmas assembled in minutes, feeding entire congregations without breaking a sweat. The next 5 introduced strawberries, chocolate, and the dump cake that started appearing at every single potluck. The pinkest dump cake church ladies made between 1958 and 1979 was strawberry dump cake, using strawberry pie filling, white cake mix, and butter, because strawberries were the most popular fruit at church potlucks and little girls loved pink desserts. This wasn't strawberry shortcake made with fresh berries and homemade whipped cream. This was 2 21-ounce cans of Comstock strawberry pie filling, dumped into a 9 by 13 pan, covered with Duncan Hines white cake mix poured straight from the box, topped with 2 sticks of margarine sliced thin and arranged to cover the entire surface, then baked at 350 degrees for 45 minutes until the cake mix turned golden and the strawberry filling bubbled pink and sticky around the edges. Grandma's bought strawberry pie filling for 54 cents per can, white cake mix for 42 cents, and margarine for 59 cents per pound, creating desserts that cost $2.09 total and got served at Mother's Day church brunches, Valentine's fellowship dinners, and spring potlucks when everyone was tired of winter and wanted something that tasted like sunshine and fresh berries, even if it came from a can. The most decadent dump cake church ladies brought to potlucks between 1962 and 1978 was chocolate cherry dump cake, made with cherry pie filling, chocolate cake mix, and butter, because the combination tasted like Black Forest cake without requiring European baking techniques or fancy chocolate shavings. This wasn't a layered torte with kirsch-soaked cake and stabilized whipped cream. This was 2 cans of dark, sweet cherry pie filling dumped into a buttered 9 by 13 pan, sprinkled with Duncan Hines Devil's Food cake mix poured directly from the box, dotted with 2 sticks of butter sliced into thin pats and distributed across the dry mix, then baked at 350 degrees until the chocolate cake absorbed the cherry juice and formed a fudgy crust over bubbling cherry filling. Church ladies bought cherry pie filling for 49 cents per can, chocolate cake mix for 45 cents, and butter for 68 cents, creating desserts that cost $2.11 and tasted fancy enough for church Christmas parties and Easter potlucks, even though they required zero baking skills and came together in under 10 minutes of actual work. The most economical dump cake grandmas made between 1955 and 1976 was fruit cocktail dump cake, using canned fruit cocktail, yellow cake mix, and butter, because fruit cocktail cost less than pie filling and fed more people per can. This wasn't a fresh fruit tart with pastry cream and glazed berries. This was two 29-ounce cans of Del Monte fruit cocktail in heavy syrup dumped into a 9x13 pan with all the juice included, covered with Betty Crocker yellow cake mix sprinkled straight from the box, topped with 2 sticks of margarine sliced thin and arranged in rows, then baked at 350 degrees for 50 minutes until the cake mix absorbed the syrup and turned golden brown while the fruit cocktail bubbled underneath. Church ladies bought fruit cocktail for 39 cents per large can during grocery store sales, cake mix for 42 cents, and margarine for 59 cents, creating desserts that cost $1.79 total and served 24 people at Wednesday night church suppers when the budget was tight and the congregation was large, and nobody cared that the dessert contained canned pears and grapes and maraschino cherries all mixed together. The tangiest dump cake church ladies made between 1965 and 1979 was lemon dump cake, using lemon pie filling, white cake mix, and butter, because lemon cut through the sweetness of heavy church potluck meals and tasted refreshing after fried chicken and macaroni casseroles. This wasn't lemon meringue pie with tall peaks of toasted meringue. This was 2 cans of Comstock lemon pie filling dumped into a greased 9x13 pan, sprinkled with Pillsbury white cake mix poured directly from the box without stirring, dotted with 2 sticks of butter sliced into 1/4-inch pieces and distributed evenly across the surface, then baked at 350 degrees until the top turned golden and the lemon filling bubbled tart and yellow around the edges. Grandmas bought lemon pie filling for 56 cents per can because lemons cost more than other fruits, white cake mix for 42 cents, and butter for 68 cents, creating desserts that cost $2.22 and got served at summer church picnics and ladies' auxiliary luncheons when everyone needed something light and citrusy after eating too much potato salad and baked beans in the fellowship hall. The most old-fashioned dump cake church ladies brought to potlucks between 1952 and 1975 was blackberry dump cake, made with blackberry pie filling, yellow cake mix, and butter because blackberries reminded elderly church members of picking wild berries during the Depression, when store-bought desserts were luxury items nobody could afford. This wasn't a blackberry cobbler made with hand-rolled biscuit dough and fresh-picked berries. This was 2 cans of wilderness blackberry pie filling dumped into a buttered 9x13 baking dish, covered with Duncan Hines yellow cake mix sprinkled straight from the box, topped with 2 sticks of margarine sliced thin and placed in neat rows across the dry mix, then baked at 350 degrees for 45 minutes until the yellow cake turned golden and the blackberry filling bubbled dark purple and seedy around the edges, staining the pan permanently. Church ladies bought blackberry pie filling for 58 cents per can because blackberries were specialty fruit, cake mix for 39 cents, and margarine for 59 cents, creating desserts that cost $2.14 and tasted like nostalgia and childhood summers and simpler times before anyone worried about seeds stuck in their dentures. 10 dump cakes finished, 20 more ahead. We've covered the classics: cherry, peach, apple, chocolate. Now we move to the cobbler variations, the ones that used soda instead of butter, the fancy versions with extra ingredients. These are the dump cakes that made church ladies look like master bakers. The bubbliest dump cake church ladies made between 1968 and 1979 was peach cobbler dump cake, using canned peaches, yellow cake mix, and lemon-lime soda instead of butter because the carbonation created a lighter, fluffier texture that tasted more like traditional cobbler than dense dump cake. This wasn't grandmother's peach cobbler made with hand-rolled biscuit dough and fresh peaches sliced from the tree. This was 2 large cans of Del Monte sliced peaches in heavy syrup dumped into a 9x13 pan with all the juice, sprinkled with Duncan Hines yellow cake mix poured directly from the box without stirring, then covered with 1 12-ounce can of Sprite or 7-Up, poured slowly over the dry mix until it fizzed and bubbled, baked at 350 degrees for 45 minutes until the soda activated the cake mix and created a golden, biscuit-like topping over bubbling peach filling. Church ladies discovered this variation in the early 1970s when someone brought it to a potluck and everyone demanded the recipe, causing a shift from butter-based dump cakes to soda-based versions that used ingredients people already had in their refrigerators. Grandmas bought canned peaches for 48 cents per can, cake mix for 39 cents, and Sprite for 29 cents per can, creating desserts that cost $1.64 total and served 20 people at church ice cream socials where the fizzy texture made it feel more special than regular dump cake, even though it required the exact same lack of effort and skill to assemble in under 10 minutes. The most cinnamon-scented dump cake church ladies brought to potlucks between 1972 and 1979 was apple snickerdoodle dump cake, using apple pie filling, snickerdoodle cake mix, and butter because the cinnamon-sugar flavor combination reminded people of county fairs and homemade snickerdoodle cookies their grandmothers used to bake from scratch. This wasn't a complicated spice cake with multiple layers of cinnamon filling. This was 2 21-ounce cans of Comstock apple pie filling, dumped into a greased 9x13 pan, covered with Duncan Hines snickerdoodle cake mix that became available in the mid-1970s and revolutionized dump cakes by adding built-in cinnamon sugar flavor. Topped with 2 sticks of margarine sliced thin and arranged in rows, then baked at 350 degrees, until the snickerdoodle mix turned golden brown and formed a crispy cinnamon sugar crust over bubbling apple filling that smelled like autumn and church harvest festivals. Church ladies bought apple pie filling for 52 cents per can, snickerdoodle cake mix for 48 cents because specialty flavors cost more than plain yellow or chocolate, and margarine for 59 cents per pound, creating desserts that cost $2.11 and disappeared faster than regular apple dump cake because the cinnamon sugar topping tasted like cookies and cake combined. Grandmas served this at Thanksgiving church dinners and fall festivals when everyone craved cinnamon-spiced desserts that required no rolling out cookie dough or making pie crust from scratch, just dumping 3 ingredients into a pan and letting the oven do all the work while they socialized in the fellowship hall. The simplest cobbler-style dump dessert church ladies made between 1958 and 1975 was cherry cobbler with cake mix, using cherry pie filling, white cake mix, and sugar, because it created a biscuit-like topping that was less sweet than traditional dump cake and appealed to people who found regular dump cakes too rich. This wasn't cherry cobbler made with homemade biscuit dough rolled out and cut into circles. This was 2 cans of cherry pie filling dumped into a buttered 9x13 pan, sprinkled with white cake mix mixed with 2 tablespoons of sugar to enhance sweetness, dotted with butter, then topped with a light sprinkle of additional sugar across the surface before baking at 375 degrees for 40 minutes until the topping turned golden and slightly crispy, like cobbler biscuits rather than cake-like, the way regular dump cakes turned out. Church ladies preferred this version when serving elderly congregation members who complained that dump cakes were too sweet and heavy, finding that the extra sugar sprinkled on top created a crystallized crust that added texture without overwhelming sweetness. Grandmas bought cherry pie filling for 49 cents per can, white cake mix for 42 cents, sugar for 39 cents per 5-pound bag that lasted for months, and butter for 68 cents, creating desserts that cost $2.08 and served at church potlucks alongside regular dump cakes. So people could choose between the sweeter cake-style version and the lighter cobbler-style variation that tasted more like traditional Southern desserts their mothers used to make during Sunday dinners, when the whole family gathered around tables covered with embroidered cloths and served dessert on china plates instead of paper. The most unusual dump cake church ladies made between 1960 and 1976 was rhubarb dump cake, using fresh or frozen rhubarb, strawberry jello powder, and white cake mix, because rhubarb was too tart to use alone and needed the sweetness of strawberry gelatin to balance the sour flavor that made children pucker. This wasn't rhubarb pie made with hand-rolled crust and careful sugar measurements. This was 4 cups of chopped rhubarb spread across the bottom of a greased 9x13 pan, sprinkled with 1 3-ounce box of strawberry jello powder that turned the rhubarb pink and added sweetness, covered with white cake mix poured straight from the box, topped with 2 sticks of butter sliced thin and distributed evenly, then baked at 350 degrees for 50 minutes until the rhubarb softened and released tart juice that mixed with the jello and created a tangy sweet filling under the golden cake topping. Church ladies who grew rhubarb in their backyard gardens made this dessert in late spring when rhubarb stalks grew thick and nobody knew what to do with the massive harvest that appeared every year whether they wanted it or not. Grandmas bought strawberry jello for 19 cents per box, white cake mix for 42 cents, and butter for 68 cents, using rhubarb from their gardens that cost nothing, creating desserts that cost $1.29 total, and served at spring church potlucks when fresh produce was scarce, and everyone appreciated desserts made with actual fresh ingredients, even if the rhubarb came from someone's overgrown garden patch instead of the grocery store. The most popular spring dump cake church ladies brought to potlucks between 1965 and 1979 was strawberry rhubarb dump cake, using frozen strawberries, fresh rhubarb, and yellow cake mix, because the combination of sweet strawberries and tart rhubarb created the perfect balance that appealed to everyone, from children to elderly congregation members. This wasn't strawberry rhubarb pie with lattice crust and precise fruit ratios. This was 2 cups of chopped fresh rhubarb mixed with 1 16-ounce package of frozen sweetened strawberries, thawed and drained, spread across a greased 9x13 pan, covered with Duncan Hines yellow cake mix, sprinkled directly from the box, dotted with 2 sticks of margarine sliced thin and arranged in rows, then baked at 350 degrees for 45 minutes until the rhubarb softened and the strawberries bubbled pink and the cake mix turned golden and absorbed all the fruit juices. Church ladies made this in May and June when rhubarb grew abundantly in Midwestern gardens and frozen strawberries went on sale at Piggly Wiggly for cheap prices, combining ingredients that separately were too tart or too sweet, but together created perfect church potluck harmony. Grandmas bought frozen strawberries for 69 cents per package, cake mix for 39 cents, and margarine for 59 cents, using rhubarb from their gardens, creating desserts that cost $1.67 and disappeared faster than single-fruit dump cakes because the pink-red color looked prettier than plain rhubarb and the flavor combination reminded people of old-fashioned pies their grandmothers used to bake when church potlucks meant homemade desserts instead of store-bought cookies and brownies from bakery boxes. The fanciest-looking dump cake church ladies made between 1955 and 1978 was pineapple upside-down dump cake, using pineapple rings, maraschino cherries, and yellow cake mix because it looked like the classic pineapple upside-down cake that required creaming butter and sugar and carefully arranging fruit in a skillet, but actually just meant dumping ingredients in a pan. This wasn't traditional pineapple upside-down cake made in a cast-iron skillet with brown sugar caramelized on the bottom. This was 1/3 cup of melted butter poured into the bottom of a 9x13 pan, sprinkled with 1 cup of brown sugar, arranged with pineapple rings from 2 cans, placed in neat rows with maraschino cherries centered in each ring, covered with yellow cake mix poured straight from the box, dotted with additional butter slices, then baked at 350 degrees for 45 minutes, and immediately inverted onto a serving platter so the pineapple and cherries became the top layer. Church ladies loved this version because it looked like they spent hours arranging fruit and baking from scratch. But actually, it took the same 10 minutes as regular dump cake, with one extra step of flipping the pan upside down while still hot. Grandmas bought canned pineapple rings for 54 cents per can, maraschino cherries for 68 cents per jar, brown sugar for 42 cents per box, yellow cake mix for 39 cents, and butter for 68 cents, creating desserts that cost $2.71 and looked fancy enough for church wedding receptions and anniversary celebrations, even though they required the same lack of skill as every other dump cake. The richest dump cake church ladies brought to potlucks between 1962 and 1979 was German chocolate dump cake, using German chocolate cake mix, shredded coconut, and chopped pecans because it tasted like the popular German chocolate cake that required making coconut pecan frosting from scratch but eliminated all the complicated stirring and cooking required for traditional recipes. This wasn't authentic German chocolate cake with 3 layers and homemade coconut pecan frosting cooked on the stovetop. This was 1 box of Duncan Hines German chocolate cake mix poured into a greased 9x13 pan, prepared according to package directions with eggs, oil, and water mixed in a bowl, topped with 1 cup of shredded coconut and 1 cup of chopped pecans sprinkled across the batter, then baked at 350 degrees for 35 minutes until the cake was done and the coconut and pecans toasted golden on top. Church ladies discovered this shortcut in the 1960s, when German chocolate cake became the most requested dessert at church potlucks, but nobody wanted to spend an hour making proper coconut pecan frosting that required constant stirring and precise temperature control. Grandmas bought German chocolate cake mix for 48 cents, shredded coconut for 59 cents per bag, and chopped pecans for $1.29 per 8-ounce package, creating desserts that cost $2.36 and tasted close enough to real German chocolate cake that most people couldn't tell the difference, especially when served with vanilla ice cream that melted into the warm coconut pecan topping and created the creamy texture that traditional frosting provided. The stickiest dump cake church ladies made between 1970 and 1979 was caramel apple dump cake, using apple pie filling, spice cake mix, and caramel topping, because it tasted like caramel apples from county fairs, without requiring the dangerous process of melting sugar to make real caramel from scratch. This wasn't caramel cake with burnt sugar frosting that required candy thermometers and expert timing. This was 2 cans of apple pie filling dumped into a 9x13 pan, drizzled with 1 cup of Smucker's caramel ice cream topping poured in zigzag patterns across the apples, covered with Duncan Hines spice cake mix sprinkled straight from the box, topped with 2 sticks of butter sliced thin and arranged in rows, then baked at 350 degrees for 45 minutes until the spice cake turned golden and the caramel melted into the apple filling and created sticky pockets of caramel throughout the dessert. Church ladies bought apple pie filling for 52 cents per can, caramel topping for 78 cents per jar, spice cake mix for 45 cents, and butter for 68 cents, creating desserts that cost $2.95 and were the most expensive dump cakes on the potluck table, but also the first to disappear because children loved anything with caramel, and adults appreciated the sophisticated flavor combination that tasted like fall harvest festivals and Halloween parties. Grandmas served this at autumn church dinners and Thanksgiving potlucks when everyone craved apple desserts, but nobody wanted to make pie crust or peel fresh apples, preferring the convenience of canned filling enhanced with store-bought caramel that made dump cake taste almost gourmet. The most dramatic-looking dump cake church ladies made between 1968 and 1979 was earthquake cake, using German chocolate cake mix, coconut, pecans, and cream cheese because the cream cheese swirled through the batter during baking and created cracks and fissures that looked like earthquake damage, hence the name that made children giggle. This wasn't a carefully layered cake with precise frosting techniques. This was 1 cup of chopped pecans and 1 cup of shredded coconut spread across the bottom of a greased 9x13 pan, topped with German chocolate cake mix prepared according to package directions and poured over the nuts and coconut, dotted with 8 ounces of cream cheese cut into small cubes and 1 stick of butter cut into pieces, sprinkled with 2 cups of powdered sugar, then baked at 350 degrees for 40 minutes, without stirring so the cream cheese and butter melted, and created marbled swirls and cracked patterns across the top that resembled earthquake fissures. Church ladies loved earthquake cake because it looked like a baking disaster, but was actually supposed to look that way, eliminating the pressure to create perfect-looking desserts that characterized traditional church potluck competition. Grandmas bought German chocolate cake mix for 48 cents, coconut for 59 cents, pecans for $1.29, cream cheese for 68 cents, butter for 68 cents, and powdered sugar for 42 cents, creating desserts that cost $4.14 and were the most expensive dump cakes but also generated the most conversation because people always asked what happened during baking, and church ladies enjoyed explaining that the earthquake appearance was intentional, not accidental. The most elegant dump cake church ladies brought to potlucks between 1965 and 1979 was Black Forest dump cake, using cherry pie filling, chocolate cake mix, and whipped cream topping because it resembled the famous German Black Forest cake that required skilled baking techniques but actually just meant dumping cherries and chocolate together and adding Cool Whip. This wasn't authentic Schwarzwälder Kirschtorte with kirsch-soaked cake layers and stabilized whipped cream. This was 2 cans of dark sweet cherry pie filling dumped into a 9x13 pan, covered with Duncan Hines Devil's Food chocolate cake mix sprinkled straight from the box, dotted with 2 sticks of butter sliced thin and arranged in rows, baked at 350 degrees for 45 minutes, then cooled and topped with 1 8-ounce container of Cool Whip spread across the surface and garnished with maraschino cherries placed decoratively on top. Church ladies made this for special occasions like Christmas potlucks and Easter celebrations when regular dump cake seemed too casual, but nobody had time to bake elaborate layer cakes from scratch. Grandmas bought cherry pie filling for 49 cents per can, chocolate cake mix for 45 cents, butter for 68 cents, Cool Whip for 68 cents, and maraschino cherries for 68 cents, creating desserts that cost $3.47 and looked fancy enough for church wedding receptions even though they required the same 10 minutes of assembly as basic dump cake plus 5 minutes of spreading whipped topping after the cake cooled, making it the most labor-intensive dump cake but still easier than any traditional layer cake recipe. The most seasonal dump cake church ladies made between 1965 and 1979 was pumpkin dump cake, using canned pumpkin puree, spice cake mix, and butter, because it tasted like pumpkin pie without requiring pie crust skills or waiting for pumpkin filling to set properly in the oven. This wasn't traditional pumpkin pie made with fresh pumpkin, heavy cream, and a hand-rolled crust crimped around the edges. This was one 29-ounce can of Libby's pumpkin puree mixed with one 12-ounce can of evaporated milk, 3/4 cup of white sugar, 3 eggs, and 1 tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice, poured into a greased 9x13 pan. Covered with Duncan Hines spice cake mix, sprinkled straight from the box without stirring. Topped with 2 sticks of margarine sliced into thin pats, and arranged in neat rows across the dry cake mix. Then baked at 350 degrees for 50 minutes, until the pumpkin filling set like custard, and the spice cake topping turned golden brown and crispy like streusel. Church ladies made this exclusively for November church potlucks, Thanksgiving fellowship dinners, and harvest festival celebrations, when everyone expected pumpkin desserts, but nobody wanted to make actual pumpkin pie that required rolling out dough and blind baking crusts and worrying about soggy bottoms. Grandmas bought canned pumpkin for 48 cents per large can, evaporated milk for 32 cents per can, spice cake mix for 45 cents, eggs for 48 cents per dozen using only 3, white sugar for 39 cents per 5-pound bag using less than a cup, pumpkin pie spice for 68 cents per jar that lasted for years, and margarine for 59 cents per pound, creating desserts that cost approximately $2.39 total, and served 24 people at church Thanksgiving dinners, where it got placed on the dessert table alongside actual pumpkin pies, and nobody could tell which desserts required hours of work versus which ones were assembled in 10 minutes and dumped into a pan. The pumpkin layer on the bottom tasted exactly like pumpkin pie filling, creamy and spiced and smooth, while the spice cake topping provided the textural contrast that pie crust would have offered, and when served with Cool Whip dolloped on top, the entire dessert fooled people into thinking they were eating legitimate pumpkin pie instead of lazy dump cake that required no rolling pins, no pastry blenders, no chilling dough, no crimping edges, just opening cans and boxes and letting the oven transform everything into Thanksgiving dessert that fed the whole congregation. The most festive Christmas dump cake church ladies brought to potlucks between 1968 and 1979 was cranberry dump cake, using canned cranberry sauce, white cake mix, and orange zest, because cranberries were too tart to eat alone, but combined with sweet cake mix and citrus created the perfect holiday flavor combination. This wasn't cranberry-orange bread, made with fresh cranberries chopped by hand, and real orange juice. This was one 14-ounce can of Ocean Spray whole berry cranberry sauce, and one 14-ounce can of jellied cranberry sauce, both dumped into a greased 9x13 pan and spread evenly, sprinkled with the zest of 2 oranges grated directly over the cranberry layer. Covered with Pillsbury white cake mix poured straight from the box, topped with 2 sticks of butter sliced thin and distributed across the surface, then baked at 350 degrees for 45 minutes until the white cake turned golden and the cranberry sauce bubbled red and tart around the edges. Church ladies made this for December church potlucks, Christmas Eve fellowship dinners, and New Year's Day brunches, when everyone had leftover canned cranberry sauce from Thanksgiving that nobody ate because everyone preferred homemade cranberry relish or forgot to serve the canned version at all. Grandmas bought canned cranberry sauce for 39 cents per can during post-Thanksgiving sales when grocery stores discounted holiday items, white cake mix for 42 cents, oranges for 29 cents for a bag of 6, using only 2, and butter for 68 cents, creating desserts that cost $2.37 and looked elegant with the deep red cranberry color showing through cracks in the golden cake topping. The orange zest added brightness that cut through the sweetness and made the dessert taste sophisticated, instead of like leftover Thanksgiving cranberry sauce repurposed into dump cake. though that's exactly what it was. Church ladies served this alongside other Christmas desserts and watched it disappear just as quickly as fancier cookies and cakes that required hours of decorating, proving once again that dump cakes could hold their own on any church potluck dessert table, regardless of season or occasion or how much effort other people put into their contributions to the fellowship meal. The brightest summer dump cake church ladies made between 1970 and 1979 was lemon blueberry dump cake, using lemon pie filling, fresh or frozen blueberries, and white cake mix because the combination of tart lemon and sweet blueberries created a refreshing dessert that cut through heavy church potluck meals. This wasn't lemon blueberry layer cake with lemon curd filling and cream cheese frosting. This was one 21-ounce can of Comstock lemon pie filling dumped into a 9x13 pan, topped with 2 cups of fresh blueberries or one 16-ounce bag of frozen blueberries scattered across the lemon filling, covered with Duncan Hines white cake mix sprinkled directly from the box, dotted with 2 sticks of butter sliced into quarter-inch pats and arranged in rows, then baked at 350 degrees for 50 minutes. Until the cake mix turned golden, and the lemon filling bubbled yellow, and the blueberries burst, and created purple streaks through the bright yellow lemon layer. Church ladies made this during summer months when fresh blueberries appeared at farmers' markets and roadside stands, or year-round using frozen blueberries from the grocery store freezer section that cost less than fresh and worked just as well in dump cake recipes that required no delicate handling of fruit. Grandmas bought lemon pie filling for 56 cents per can, fresh blueberries for 98 cents per pint in season, or frozen blueberries for 68 cents per bag year-round, white cake mix for 42 cents, and butter for 68 cents, creating desserts that cost $2.64 using fresh berries, or $2.34 using frozen, serving 20 people at church summer picnics and 4th of July potlucks, when everyone needed something lighter and more refreshing than chocolate or caramel desserts. The lemon-blueberry combination tasted like summer and sunshine, and reminded people of blueberry muffins and lemon bars combined into one easy dessert that required no muffin tins, no lemon curd cooking, no careful folding of berries into batter, just dumping everything into a pan and trusting the oven to make it work, which it always did because dump cakes were foolproof in ways that traditional baking never was for church ladies who had better things to do than worry about proper creaming techniques. The creamiest dump cake church ladies brought to potlucks between 1972 and 1979 was strawberry cheesecake dump cake, using strawberries, cream cheese filling, and graham cracker crust, because it tasted like actual cheesecake, without requiring a springform pan or worrying about cracks forming on the surface during baking. This wasn't New York-style cheesecake with a water bath and precise temperature control. This was one 16-ounce package of frozen sweetened strawberries, thawed and drained, spread across the bottom of a 9x13 pan, topped with 8 ounces of cream cheese, softened and mixed with 1/3 cup of sugar and 1 egg, beaten until smooth and poured over the strawberries. Sprinkled with 1 box of graham cracker crumbs mixed with 1/3 cup of melted butter, then baked at 325 degrees for 40 minutes, until the cream cheese layer set like cheesecake filling and the graham cracker topping turned golden and crispy. Church ladies discovered this variation in the mid-1970s, when no-bake cheesecakes became popular, but still required refrigeration time that made them impractical for potlucks, where desserts sat out for hours. Grandmas bought frozen strawberries for 69 cents per package, cream cheese for 68 cents per 8-ounce package, graham cracker crumbs for 72 cents per box, eggs for 48 cents per dozen using only 1, sugar for 39 cents per bag using a small amount, and butter for 68 cents using only 1/3 of a stick creating desserts that cost approximately $3.14 and were the most expensive dump cakes, but also the most impressive because they actually contained real cream cheese and tasted like legitimate cheesecake instead of just cake mix and canned fruit. The strawberries on the bottom created a fruity layer. The cream cheese in the middle tasted rich and tangy like real cheesecake, and the graham cracker topping provided the crust element that tied everything together, making this the dump cake that church ladies brought when they wanted to show off just a little bit, while still maintaining the lazy dump-and-bake philosophy that defined the entire category of desserts that fed congregations without requiring culinary school training or hours of kitchen labor. The most nutritious dump cake church ladies made between 1965 and 1978 was apple sweet potato dump cake, using canned sweet potatoes, apple pie filling, and pecan topping, because sweet potatoes counted as vegetables and made the dessert seem healthier even though it contained just as much sugar as every other dump cake. This wasn't sweet potato casserole with marshmallow topping served as a Thanksgiving side dish. This was one 29-ounce can of Bruce's cut sweet potatoes, drained and mashed roughly with a fork, spread across the bottom of a greased 9x13 pan, topped with 2 cans of apple pie filling spread evenly over the sweet potato layer. Sprinkled with 1 cup of chopped pecans mixed with 1/2 cup of brown sugar and 1/3 cup of melted butter, then baked at 350 degrees for 45 minutes until the sweet potatoes heated through and the apple filling bubbled and the pecan topping caramelized into a crunchy streusel-like layer. Church ladies made this for fall potlucks and Thanksgiving dinners when they wanted to bring dessert but felt guilty about not contributing a vegetable dish, reasoning that sweet potatoes technically made this dump cake acceptable as both dessert and side dish, depending on when it got served during the meal. Grandmas bought canned sweet potatoes for 54 cents per large can, apple pie filling for 52 cents per can using 2 cans, brown sugar for 42 cents per box, pecans for $1.29 per package, and butter for 68 cents using only 1/3 of a pound, creating desserts that cost approximately $3.97 and were among the most expensive dump cakes but also the only ones that contained actual vegetables, making them slightly more justifiable to serve at church dinners where diabetes and heart disease were common concerns among elderly congregation members who probably should have been eating fewer desserts but never turned down dump cake when it appeared on the potluck table looking golden and bubbling and smelling like cinnamon and apples and autumn sundays, when church fellowship meant community and dessert tables groaning under the weight of 30 different cakes and pies and cobblers. 25 dump cakes down, 5 remain. These final recipes represent the ultimate dump cake evolution: Oreos, marshmallows, cinnamon rolls, and the mysterious minister's delight that appeared at every church potluck. These are the desserts that defined lazy baking at its finest, feeding congregations without breaking a sweat. The richest chocolate dump cake church ladies made between 1968 and 1979 was chocolate dump cake, using chocolate pudding, chocolate cake mix, and chocolate chips, because triple chocolate appealed to serious chocolate lovers who found regular dump cakes too fruity and not chocolate-forward enough for their preferences. This wasn't flourless chocolate cake made with European chocolate and precise tempering techniques. This was 2 3.9-ounce boxes of Jell-O instant chocolate pudding mix, prepared according to package directions with cold milk, poured into a greased 9x13 pan, covered with Duncan Hines Devil's Food chocolate cake mix, sprinkled straight from the box, dotted with 2 sticks of butter sliced thin and arranged in rows, sprinkled with 1 12-ounce bag of Nestlé semi-sweet chocolate chips scattered across the surface, then baked at 350 degrees for 45 minutes until the pudding set like chocolate lava on the bottom, and the cake mix turned into fudgy brownies on top, and the chocolate chips melted into pockets of molten chocolate throughout. Church ladies made this for chocolate lovers who complained that fruit dump cakes were too sweet and not chocolatey enough, creating a dessert that delivered chocolate in every single bite, from bottom to top. Grandmas bought instant chocolate pudding for 29 cents per box, using 2 boxes. Whole milk for 59 cents per half gallon, using 4 cups total. Chocolate cake mix for 45 cents, butter for 68 cents, and chocolate chips for 78 cents per bag, creating desserts that cost $3.08 and were the most decadent dump cakes on any church potluck dessert table. The pudding layer on the bottom stayed gooey and fudgy, the cake layer in the middle turned dense and brownie-like, and the chocolate chips on top created textural variety that kept every bite interesting instead of monotonous. Church ladies served this with vanilla ice cream that melted into the warm chocolate layers and created a sundae-like experience. Children loved chocolate dump cake because it tasted like brownies and pudding combined. Oreo dump cake. The most cookies and cream-flavored dump cake church ladies brought to potlucks between 1975 and 1979 was Oreo dump cake, using crushed Oreo cookies, chocolate cake mix, and sweetened condensed milk because it tasted like Oreo ice cream in cake form and appealed to children who recognized Oreos as their favorite cookie. This wasn't an elaborate Oreo layer cake with cookies baked into the batter and Oreo buttercream frosting, spread across the bottom of a greased 9x13 pan, covered with Duncan Hines Devil's Food chocolate cake mix, prepared according to package directions and poured over the crushed Oreos, drizzled with 1 14-ounce can of Eagle brand sweetened condensed milk, poured in zigzag patterns across the batter, then baked at 350 degrees for 35 minutes until the cake was done and the sweetened condensed milk created pockets of creamy sweetness throughout the chocolate cake that tasted like the cream filling from Oreo cookies. Church ladies discovered this recipe in the late 1970s when Oreos became ubiquitous in American households and people started incorporating them into recipes beyond just eating them with milk. Grandmas bought Oreo cookies for 68 cents per package, chocolate cake mix for 45 cents, sweetened condensed milk for 78 cents per can, plus eggs and oil for the cake mix preparation, totaling approximately 50 cents, creating desserts that cost $2.41 and disappeared faster than any other dump cake because children recognized Oreos and begged their parents for slices before the dessert table officially opened. The crushed Oreos on the bottom stayed slightly crunchy and provided textural contrast to the soft chocolate cake. The sweetened condensed milk created sticky sweet pockets that tasted like cookie cream filling, and the combination reminded people of cookies and cream ice cream without requiring an ice cream maker or any freezing time. Church ladies served this at vacation Bible school potlucks and children's ministry celebrations when kid-friendly desserts mattered more than sophisticated adult flavors. Watching children line up for seconds and thirds while their mothers pretended not to notice how much sugar their kids consumed during fellowship time after evening services. The gooeyest dump cake church ladies made between 1970 and 1979 was warm Rocky Road dump cake, using chocolate cake mix, marshmallows, and chopped nuts because it tasted like Rocky Road ice cream in hot cake form and had to be served warm or the marshmallows hardened into inedible nuggets. This wasn't a carefully constructed Rocky Road cake with layers of chocolate cake, marshmallow frosting, and toasted nuts. This was 1 box of Duncan Hines Devil's Food chocolate cake mix, prepared according to package directions and poured into a greased 9x13 pan, topped with 2 cups of miniature marshmallows and 1 cup of chopped walnuts or pecans scattered across the batter, baked at 350 degrees for 30 minutes until the cake was almost done, then topped with an additional cup of marshmallows and baked for 5 more minutes until the marshmallows puffed up and turned golden brown on top. Church ladies made this for winter potlucks and Christmas celebrations when hot desserts made more sense than cold ones. but they had to time it perfectly so the cake came out of the oven right before serving, because marshmallows turned rock hard when they cooled completely. Grandma's bought chocolate cake mix for 45 cents, miniature marshmallows for 58 cents per 10-ounce bag using 3 cups total, chopped nuts for $1.29 per package, plus eggs and oil for cake mix preparation, creating desserts that cost approximately $2.82 and required more careful timing than regular dump cakes that could sit out for hours without quality degradation, which actually worked in their favor because it meant the dessert disappeared quickly and they didn't have to take leftovers home in the pan they brought it in, could just rinse the pan in the church kitchen sink and go home unburdened by leftover dessert that would sit in their refrigerators for weeks. The most breakfast-appropriate dump cake church ladies brought to potlucks between 1974 and 1979 was cinnamon roll dump cake, using refrigerated cinnamon roll dough, apple pie filling, and cake mix because it tasted like cinnamon rolls and apple pie combined and could be served at morning church fellowship breakfasts without seeming inappropriate. This wasn't homemade cinnamon rolls made with yeast dough that required rising time and careful rolling technique. This was 2 cans of Pillsbury refrigerated cinnamon rolls with icing separated, the rolls cut into quarters and scattered across the bottom of a greased 9x13 pan, topped with 1 21-ounce can of apple pie filling spread evenly over the cinnamon roll pieces, sprinkled with 1 box of yellow cake mix poured straight from the box, dotted with 2 sticks of butter sliced thin and arranged in rows, baked at 350 degrees for 40 minutes until the cake mix turned golden and the cinnamon rolls puffed up and the apple filling bubbled, then drizzled with the reserved icing from the cinnamon roll cans while still warm. Church ladies made this for Sunday morning fellowship breakfasts after early services when people expected breakfast food instead of traditional desserts. The cinnamon roll pieces created pockets of sweet cinnamon throughout the dessert. The apple filling added fruit that made it breakfast appropriate, and the icing drizzle on top made everything look fancy and intentional instead of just dumped together, which of course it was, but the icing hid that fact better than regular dump cake toppings that made no attempt to disguise their lazy assembly method. The most appropriately named dump cake church ladies made between 1958 and 1979 was Minister's Delight, using cherry pie filling, crushed pineapple, yellow cake mix, and coconut because it combined the most popular dump cake flavors into one dessert that pleased everyone, including the minister, who got first choice at every church potluck. This wasn't a carefully constructed flavor profile cake designed by pastry chefs. This was 1 21-ounce can of cherry pie filling and 1 20-ounce can of crushed pineapple, with juice both dumped into a greased 9x13 pan and stirred together to combine the red cherries and yellow pineapple, covered with Duncan Hines yellow cake mix, sprinkled straight from the box, topped with 2 sticks of butter sliced thin and arranged in rows, sprinkled with 1 cup of shredded coconut scattered across the surface, then baked at 350 degrees for 50 minutes until the cake mix turned golden and the coconut toasted brown and the fruit filling bubbled pink and yellow around the edges. Grandma's bought cherry pie filling for 49 cents per can, crushed pineapple for 39 cents per can, yellow cake mix for 39 cents, butter for 68 cents, and shredded coconut for 59 cents, creating desserts that cost $2.54 and combined tropical pineapple with traditional cherry in a flavor combination that shouldn't have worked but somehow did, the sweetness of both fruits balanced by the toasted coconut that added texture and visual interest. The name made this dump cake special at church potlucks, elevating it above regular dump cakes even though the preparation method was identical, just dump and bake, no mixing required. But the Minister's Delight title suggested it was fancier and more thoughtful than other desserts. which made church ladies feel good about their contributions, even though they spent the same 10 minutes assembling it as every other dump cake they ever made for fellowship dinners and potluck suppers and Wednesday night church meals that fed entire congregations without anyone breaking a sweat. Between 1950 and 1979, 30 dump-and-bake desserts fed entire congregations across America before anyone worried about looking lazy or taking shortcuts in the kitchen. Church ladies assembled these desserts in 10 minutes, dumping canned fruit and boxed cake mix into 9 by 13 pans, feeding 20 people for under $3 without using a single mixing bowl or demonstrating any actual baking skill. These weren't recipes passed down through generations or guarded as family secrets. These were the ultimate lazy church potluck survival strategy. The desserts women made when they had to bring something to fellowship dinner but couldn't spend all day in the kitchen because they had jobs and children and lives beyond baking elaborate cakes from scratch. The dump-and-bake method revolutionized church potlucks, democratizing dessert contribution so that even terrible bakers could show up with something that looked impressive and tasted good enough to feed the minister. By 1980, when homemade desserts started losing ground to store-bought bakery cakes and commercially prepared desserts, dump cakes represented the final era when church ladies still baked but refused to work hard doing it. Tonight, we've remembered these 30 forgotten dump-and-bake desserts that fed the whole church, one lazy pan at a time.